Welcome to the second episode in a Legendarium series about the life of Canute the Great. In Part 2, Peace Comes to England, we will talk about how Canute transformed himself from a bloodthirsty conqueror into an effective lawgiver. In October 1016, Edmund Ironside, the son of a dethroned English king, and Canute, son of a Viking conqueror, agreed that the whole of England would go to whichever of the two lived longer. 1 month later, on November 30th, 1016, Edmund Ironside came down with a slight case of death. In years to come, chroniclers claimed that an English traitor murdered Edmund by some contrivance. One source claimed poison. Another claimed that an assassin hid in his latrine shaft with a dagger and stabbed him in the buttocks as he answered nature's insistent call. While the latter story is unlikely, the fact that a young and fit king died suddenly, and so conveniently for his rival, makes foul play by Canute seem probable. In any case, on Christmas Day 1016, England became part of a North Sea empire ruled by Canute. It included England, Denmark, Norway, and the southwestern coast of Sweden. Not only did Canute take England, but he also took Archbishop Wulfstan as his chief advisor. By coronating Canute, the archbishop made the Viking adventurer the Lord's anointed. Medieval people saw a coronation as a sacred ceremony, which elevated a man halfway between heaven and earth. Kingship also harkened back to Germanic traditions, which held that kings were descended from the gods themselves, possessing magic in their hair and their blood. Peasants even believed that the king's mere presence could bring about good weather and harvests. Meanwhile, Emma of Normandy, the widow of King Ethelred and mother to the late Edmund Ironside, faced a hard choice. Medieval society expected men to be brave and aggressive, but expected women to be peace weavers who ended the fighting when it grew too terrible. Since Emma's 2 surviving children could be seen as a threat to Canute, she sent her children Edward and Godgifu to her homeland in Normandy. Emma herself had estates and titles in England granted to her by her late husband. So Emma of Normandy married Canute, which secured her own status in England and smoothed Canute's transition to power by linking the old and new dynasties. Of course, this plan had one snag. Canute already had a wife named Elfgifu of Northumbria, so Emma turned peace weaver again. While Elfgifu kept her estates, Emma's surviving children took precedence over Elfgifu's son Harthacnut in the succession for Canute's throne, and so King Canute, himself a nominal Christian, also became a bigamist. King Canute's coronation marked the first time in eight years that peace came to England. At the Christmas celebration in London, all of England's nobles came to recognize Canute as their king. In the Kentlinga saga, the author described Canute as exceptionally tall and strong, and the most recognized of men, all except for his nose, that was thin, high-set, and rather hooked. He had a fair complexion, and a fine thick head of hair. His eyes were better than those of other men, both the more handsome and keener of their sight. This new king had some harsh justice for some of his new subjects. Early in his reign, Canute often resorted to executions and exile to maintain his precarious hold on the throne. Canute almost certainly engineered the murder of Edmund Ironside's brother, and then chased Edmund's children into Hungary before murdering several of their retainers. Yet this reign of terror only lasted for a few years. Together with Archbishop Wulfstan, Queen Emma led the royal council. She and Wulfstan advised Canute to allow the surviving aristocratic families in England to keep their lands and not touch the churches that remained unburnt. Only 3 years later, King Canute returned to Ashington and dedicated a church to the souls of all men, whether Norse or English, who died in the battle which made him king. Not wishing to destroy England's social order, Canute ruled with the advice of English and Danish nobles. Yet 2 Danes who helped him win the throne, Earl Eric of Norway and Thorkild the Tall, became Earls of Northumbria and East Anglia, respectively. Yet his wife, Queen Emma, proved most valuable in cementing his reign. To rehabilitate her new husband in the eyes of the church he once looted, Emma reorganized the reconstruction of churches and refilled their coffers at royal expense. She gifted the church many expensive items, including a golden cross given to the Minster of Winchester. Indeed, Emma's standing with the church grew so great that she was able to make a member of her entourage Stigand the new Archbishop of Canterbury. Before securing his new order completely, Canute also had to deal with the thousands of unemployed Viking raiders who brought him to power. To pay them off, Canute used a tactic that made Ethelred despised in the eyes of his subjects. He raised a staggering sum, 48,000 pounds of silver, by sword point from his English subjects. Though it caused immense pain to the taxpayers, it allowed the raiders to go home in style and leave England in peace. With 3,000 remaining Norse, he created an elite bodyguard, which became the core of his army. He stationed these soldiers at strategic points around the kingdom to combat both English and Danish lawbreakers, to show that one race would not be favored over the other, despite the conquest. King Canute then divided the kingdom into 4 great earldoms so it could be more easily run. They included Edric's Mercia, Wulfstan's Northumbria, and Thorkild's East Anglia. Meanwhile, Canute held Wessex for himself. Canute also created a series of lesser earldoms along the Scottish, Welsh, and Cornish borders to stop raiders. Meanwhile, Archbishop Wulfstan drafted a new law code which established Canute as a successor of the House of Wessex, just one example of how Canute used English laws to govern England. And while Canute ruled Wessex directly, he appointed viceroys to East Anglia, Mercia, and Northumbria. Ironically, this would give later generations of nobles the vast estates and revenues needed to resist later kings, whether Norse, English, or finally Norman. Indeed, Canute reaped this bitter fruit early on when Edric Striona quarreled with him. The Mercian magnate insisted that without his timely desertion, Edmund Ironside would have become King of England. King Canute replied that a man who betrayed one master would likely do the same to another. While Edric arrogantly argued with the king, Eric of Northumbria struck Edric in the head with a battle axe. The royal party then placed Edric's head on a spike near London Bridge. Despite this sordid matter, Canute's power in England remained stable. He and Queen Emma had a boy named Harthacanute and a girl named Gunhild, who later married Prince Heinrich of the Holy Roman Empire, a reminder of Anglo-Saxon England's far reach into continental Europe. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got any say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.